Julia and Oscar were busy placing underwater explosives for a scientific experiment. Just when they were wrapping things up, an emergency alert flashed across their radio. A massive storm was heading their way, and they needed to evacuate immediately. Not too far away, a Russian submarine was tracking strange, high-intensity underwater sound waves. The crew was baffled when they realized the ocean surface above them was rising, almost as if something huge was pushing it upward. Back at Julia's camp, her scanners started glitching violently. The ice around them cracked open like shattered glass. Julia tried to grab her research equipment, but there was no time. Oscar pulled her onto the snowmobile and sped off. Below, the submarine crew discovered that the sounds were biological, coming from some living creature. But before they could react, something slammed into the submarine with terrifying force. Above the surface, Julia and Oscar raced across the ice as it broke apart behind them. But the ice ahead cracked too, launching the snowmobile into the air. The machine exploded as it crashed, and the two tumbled into the snow. Their entire camp soon collapsed and sank into the freezing water, taking the rest of the scientists with it. Meanwhile, inside the damaged submarine, alarms blared. Crew members struggled to stay on their feet. After a desperate fight to regain control, they finally managed to fire a flare that lit up the ocean, and in that brief light, enormous tentacles appeared. One officer was thrown into a metal panel and knocked out cold. Another just barely activated the emergency buoy before the submarine sank into darkness. Back at Russian Navy headquarters, the sudden disappearance of this submarine triggered panic. It carried extremely sensitive weapons. Command immediately launched a rescue mission. The team leader, Victor, younger brother of the missing captain, his family begged him not to go, afraid they would lose another son. His mother gave him his late father's watch for luck. Victor arrived at the dock the same night and saw that Admiral Olshansky, an old friend of his father, was also part of the mission. Some crew members complained they had been pulled back from vacation for this, but orders were orders. Meanwhile, lost in a deadly blizzard, Julia and Oscar managed to find a weak phone signal from a nearby oil rig. Julia called for help, but the storm's roar drowned out her voice, and the call dropped. Oscar fired a flare into the sky and collapsed from exhaustion. The next morning, Victor's rescue submarine reached the location of the missing vessel. Divers prepared to descend. Inside, Olshansky pulled Victor into a private briefing room along with other senior officers. Whatever report they showed him, it shook everyone. Rumors spread through the submarine. The first sub didn't just vanish, something took it. On the surface, Julia and Oscar discovered their buoy frozen into the ice, proof that rescue teams would eventually arrive. They decided to stay put. Soon, the rescue submarine detected the buoy's signal and headed toward it. But suddenly, a group of whales surrounded the submarine. They tried to avoid harming them, but one whale accidentally struck the propeller. Olshansky ordered the sonar on. Victor hesitated. Sonar waves could hurt the whales. Once activated, the whales swam off. Relief lasted only seconds. The whales returned, terrified. Something bigger was coming. The seafloor began to rise again. A giant tentacle shot out of the darkness and crushed a whale in one blow. The radar went crazy. The crew had no name for what they were detecting. Olshansky panicked and wanted to fire immediately. Victor stopped him. "We don't shoot unless we know what we're shooting at." They found a crack in a massive ice wall and hid inside, scraping against the frozen walls as they squeezed through. Sonar noise screamed through the headphones. Crew members clutched their ears in pain. When they finally reached a dead end, they had no choice but to stop. Fortunately, the creature drifted away. They surfaced to repair damage, and that's when they spotted Julia and Oscar. The crew rushed to rescue them and confirmed they were unarmed civilians. Olshansky wanted them thrown back out as possible spies. Victor refused. He let them stay. After repairs, the submarine dove again to search the area. Victor questioned Julia and Oscar. When Julia mentioned underwater explosives, Victor realized the blast might have triggered whatever destroyed his brother's sub. The crew debated. Olshansky insisted they return home. This creature was beyond anything humans could face. But Victor was determined to find his brother. He ordered the submarine toward Julia's camp. Olshansky confronted him furiously. "One more mistake from you, just one, and we all die." As they continued, Julia heard another strange sound. Oscar explained it was sonar from another searching submarine. Suddenly, radar picked up the creature again. Victor ordered them to find cover, but they were in open water, nowhere to hide. They contacted the oil rig for emergency refuge. The rig approved their request. But before they could surface, the rig workers saw enormous tentacles emerging from the sea. Alarms blared, metal frames collapsed, Explosions shook the rig apart. Workers ran in terror, trapped with no escape as the massive creature ripped the structure to pieces. Victor watched the destruction through the periscope, horrified. He showed it to the crew. The entire rig was gone. The monster now turned toward the submarine. They swerved hard. Pots, tools, and supplies slammed onto the floor. Olshansky snapped. "This is Victor's third bad decision. I'm taking command." He launched 2 torpedoes. Both hit, but the creature kept coming. More torpedoes, another explosion, still alive. Now the monster charged faster. Olshansky froze in fear. Victor seized command again and ordered full speed. They dodged several hits, but a tentacle struck the hull, causing heavy damage. A monitor crushed a crew member. A fire erupted inside the torpedo room. The crew sealed the burning section to prevent the fire from spreading, trapping 7 men inside with fire extinguishers. The Kraken kept smashing the sub, pulling it deeper. They had no more options. Victor activated silent mode. Kraken hunted by sound. Everyone stayed completely still. The Kraken's piercing screech nearly burst the communication officer's ears. The trapped crew stared at the flames, thinking this was the end. Then, silence. The Kraken drifted away. They could finally move again. But the fire had grown too large to control. Victor ordered them to abandon the weapons compartment and seal it off. After containing the damage, surviving crew members began repairs. Julia and Oscar treated wounded sailors, earning everyone's trust. Julia even stitched a cut on Victor's forehead, prompting jokes about the two growing close. When Victor called a meeting, the entire crew agreed. "We should turn back. We can't fight that thing." Olshansky reminded Victor of his father's heroism, saving his entire crew at the cost of his own life. Reluctantly, Victor agreed to return home. While preparing for the journey back, Victor read one of his father's old letters. Julia noticed birds kept in the room. Victor explained they were an old-school oxygen warning system. If the birds panicked, the air wasn't safe. Julia marked all sightings of the creature on a map. According to her research, the Kraken had attacked ships long ago, then vanished. Scholars believed it had gone into a deep hibernation. Her explosives likely awakened it. She warned Victor, "If we make another mistake, it'll find us again." Victor asked if she knew where his brother's submarine might be. Julia said octopuses drag prey back to their lair, meaning the Kraken's nest would be somewhere near her own camp. Right then, a crew member rushed in. They had detected metal knocking recorded during silent mode. Tracing the signal revealed it came from the direction of Julia's camp. Someone might still be alive. Victor delivered a powerful speech about saving human lives and ordered the submarine toward the site.
As they approached the search area, the submarine suddenly shuddered. Rivets popped off, glass cracked. They had gone too deep. They rose slightly, discovering a massive abyss. Victor sent down a mini-submarine. One pilot was injured earlier, so Victor volunteered to go himself, leaving Olshansky in temporary command. Victor and 2 officers descended into the abyss. The deeper they went, the more the metal groaned. This submarine had never gone this far down. Then they saw it. Shipwrecks. Many of them. Julia's stories were true. Finally, they found the missing Russian submarine, damaged, but its central section still intact. They docked the mini-sub with great difficulty. Victor crossed over, knocked on the hatch, and the crew inside responded. Survivors. Even his brother Alexander was alive. Cheers erupted back in the main submarine. Alexander explained they had been staying silent to avoid attracting the Kraken, sending out signals only occasionally. Victor sent the survivors up in the mini-sub, but there were too many. They needed 2 trips. Victor insisted on staying behind with his brother. The mini-sub left, triggering movement in the wreck. Luckily, it didn't collapse. When it returned, the new pilot was too sick to go again. Julia asked Oscar, an experienced sub-operator, to pilot it. He agreed. Meanwhile, Victor and Alexander entered the weapons section of the wrecked submarine to retrieve the military codes. The system wouldn't activate at first, but Victor forced it to work. The mini-sub detected the electromagnetic pulse and moved toward them. But above, the Kraken was dangerously close to the main submarine. They landed on the seabed and went into silent mode again. A massive rock smashed onto the hull, breaking another compartment. Water began to flood in. The mini-sub reached the wreck. During docking, the tracker accidentally switched on, alerting the Kraken. The creature abandoned the main sub and sped toward the wreck. Olshansky seized the moment and ordered the main submarine to rise to the surface. Inside the wreck, Victor crawled through a tight pipe to reach the torpedo room. Alexander heard the docking noises and told the survivors to board the minisub. He stayed behind for Victor. Victor loaded the torpedoes from one side, while Alexander did the same from the computer panel. The Kraken arrived, its tentacles wrapped around the wreck, crushing metal. The two brothers apologized to each other over the radio for every past argument. The Kraken tore off half the submarine, but it was only the empty tail section. Then, at the exact same second, Victor and Alexander both pushed the launch button. A devastating explosion ignited the Kraken from inside. The creature tore apart, and a brilliant beam of light shot through the Arctic ice. Water flooded in. Victor raced back through the pipe to reach his brother. Waves separated them, but Victor spotted Alexander's hand and pulled him up. They rushed into the minisub and sealed the hatch, just seconds before the wreck exploded. The shockwave hurled them violently through the ocean. On the surface, the crew waited with no hope left, until bubbles appeared. The minisub broke through the water. Everyone erupted in celebration.
Victor tried to return his father's watch to Alexander, but Alexander smiled. No, this is yours now. You earned it. Soon after, the crew returned home. The brothers reunited with their family, sharing emotional embraces. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more videos like this.